Good morning, cellists. Here we are in week 5, and we are now going to embark on the Prelude, the opening movement of this first suite by Bach. It's the one that's probably the most iconic, and most cellists would really dearly want to play that once they first begin their journey with the cello. In terms of preparation for this, I've got a few thoughts and ideas, and we will also discuss the kind of bow that we are using today and the kind of bow that will be in use at the time of writing the suites. But let's just begin with some warm-ups. Now, the study of the week is going to be Feuillard's 38th study, and this one's about keeping the left-hand fingers on the string up the D string whilst oscillating with an open A. Now, for those of you who are already very familiar with the Prelude, you'll probably know where that's leading, and it's obviously about preparation for bar 31 onwards in the Prelude. This study is in D minor, number 38 of Feuillard, and that's going to be the scale I propose that you use for a warm-up and to kind of increase our digest. In terms of its relationship to G major, that's the dominant minor. And I think that this time we will take a melodic version of this, which also gives us some of the sort of shapes that we'll obviously encounter in the dominant major. So here we have it. Just 2 octaves will be fine for the Bach suite preparation. Little things to look out for, obviously rotation as you descend, transcending the strings here. Nice stretch, and then telescope the hand back into closed position here. That's it, it's pretty simple. If you want, you can go up another octave and we would think about the type of shift. So on the way up, we're keeping the first finger on the string. Keep it on again, and again. At the top, we remain holding the 3 notes in place, 1, 2, 3. Keep them in place, and then it's very easy to move the second finger. You slide it back at that moment, then slide first, and then we will do, and we'll slide back on the first finger and replace it with second to semitone beforehand. Same again, and again, so that the first finger really acts as a slide all the way up in the upgoing shifts and the down. Obviously we're talking about up in pitch, down pitch. So again, just watching what that is. First finger remaining in contact. Now, of course, it will seem fairly obvious and clear on the upward descent because the first finger is the next finger you're going to be using each time you do the shift. Not quite so obvious on the descent, so be careful that you really observe the movement of the first finger coming back as you put down the second finger. There you are, the melodic minor of D. Also, I think you should have a look at a diminished 7th on D, just 2 octaves. Now, rather than doing a fairly standard fingering where we put the first finger on the second note, which is a solution which can cover every single arpeggio with a major, minor, dominant or diminished, but we're not going to do that. This time we're going to be using an open D string. So we start 1-4, stretch back to a displaced semitone, close the hand, 1-4 again. Now open D. Now at this point, where my third finger is location of the F natural, I'm going to move my first finger there, and then again displace semitone back across the string, close the hand, and back again, stretch, close, open D, go back to half position, stretch and close. So it's the crab crawl, which is completely characteristic of the diminished 7th. But we're using the open D in the middle so that we can have this fingering because it's going to be relevant in bar 11. And in actual fact, we should be moving up, we should be shifting that shape up the string. Now, for those of you who know what I'm talking about already and are familiar with that bar, you might also look at a short diminished seventh which uses the same notes but is only a portion of the one I've shown you. This time starting on B, first position. So I've just done B, open D, 2 on an F natural, now 1 on a G sharp, 4 on a B. Now you can hear they're the same notes as we had in the other version. And the reason is that both of those diminished sevenths will give you a good understanding of the geography and hand shape, so that when you come to play bar 11, we start in the first version of that diminished seventh, then go back into the second version. It honestly will be helpful. So do have a look at those diminished sevenths, the one on D and the one within it on B. Moving onward, I'd also like you to do an open string bow exercise, and it's like this. And you may recognise that as a solution for the opening of the prelude, which it is. So it's really being sure that we are understanding the bow management for this. Let me just show you what that looks like. The manuscript here. There it is. And you can see the tied A in the middle there. And the rocking across the strings. Now for anything where we do string crossing, rocking with a bow, what you are aiming for is a flat bow here, and that should give you fairly even action across the strings, because you'll be very well balanced across the strings. The other question you might consider is how you're beginning that stroke. When you're beginning many notes or strokes on the down bow, we quite commonly tip the bow stick towards us so that you have less hair making contact and you can ease in with the friction so that it sounds pleasing and it's got a slightly feathered opening to that note. But in the exercises I have given previously, notably the long C exercise where we crescendo to the point and then back again, that one is done full flat hair on the string. And the idea of that is that we must learn how we can begin full flat hair, and for that sound to be still pleasing to the ear and not crunched. Okay, we don't want the crunch. So it's actually about knowing how much pressure and letting go with your breath. So it is absolutely possible to try this study with a completely flat bow hair throughout. If you find it's difficult and you get that crunchy sound, no problem. Just tip the stick slightly towards you at the heel, go to the flat hair for the point, and as you return to the heel, come back to the slightly angled hair where you're tipping the stick back towards you. Once you're then comfortable with the flow of the bow, you can then experiment to see if you can get to the complete flat hair for the whole stroke. Right, those are your warm-up technicals. We're now going to look at Feuillard's 38th study. Just one line. Now this one, as I mentioned earlier, is preparing us absolutely ideally for a string crossing section in the Bach Prelude. And the fundamental melodic line is this. And it's as well to take that line out first, so that your left hand is quite comfortable with where it's going, so that you don't get any problems when you're reading, for example, 3 A's in a row with 0, 3, 0, and worrying about what that is. We only want to have our minds really focused on that melodic line, and then you just set the bow in motion. Now in this particular study, it's presented not as per the Bach. That would be the Bach bowing in slurred quavers. Instead, it's actually staccato, up, down, and it's got the letters SP underneath the first note, which means spitzer at the point. And this is going to be really, really good for your power and strength of this part of the hand and arm of the bow arm. So take it steadily. You can see that the upper arm remains pretty much static and it's on a slightly higher plane, as if I were playing on the A string the whole time. Leave it there and do a rotation of the wrist in order to achieve the bow direction alterations. But each time the trick really is listen. Are you being as crisp and articulate with the up and the down? So the feeling is pinch. And for the up bow, that is the little finger is very responsible for this. And the down bow, the first finger. Now that's very gritty kind of sound, and aim for the gritty sound because you can always come away from it. But that will give you a really clean and strong finger action. It could always be later, you could soften it and just watch now. I'm going to try it at a quicker speed and you'll see the rotation in the wrist. I mean, that one obviously I'm not giving the staccato, it's just, I was just purely looking at the wrist action. Apologies for slightly different notes going on in there whilst I was just having a look at the action. There you have it, first line of Feuillard number 38, and it will stand you in very good stead for the Bach. Notice that apart from the bow action, which we're looking at for strength and power, that the left hand is absolutely unaware of what you're doing with the bow and must stay on the string the whole time. You press the string the whole time. Don't be tempted to take the fingers on and off. No dancing about with fingers like that. That's absolutely not what we want. And so if you play it as if you're not oscillating across the other string and you keep the fingers down, you will, your mind and ear can really be drawn through that melodic line. You also have the connectivity in your fingers, and not only that, but you will find that actually when we do a legato version, that then the sound resonates. By keeping my finger on, you may still have just heard the sound. It rings a long time. If I take my finger away, it's gone. And when it comes to Bach, we do want to hold the line, we want to have the resonance as we go up the D string there. So that's your challenge. Left hand stays absolutely on the fingerboard the whole time through this study, and the right hand is going to work incredibly hard to pinch in both the up and the down, and you want to not know which direction you're playing. If you were to shut your eyes and just listen, they must sound equally pinched. Right, let's set to work on the beginning of the prelude. Now, this is often played with separate bows, small strokes. That's absolutely fine, but we must think about the kind of bow that would have been used and available during the 1720s when this suite was written. And it was a Baroque bow, and it differs from the bow that we use today by the most obvious one visually is the stick, that, as you probably know, you will have seen in the Baroque bow, you actually get a concave wooden stick here, whereas we have a convex one, and this is being done by heat treatment of the wood, so I understand. Now, this design that we use today was invented by Tourte in the 1770s, so it is a good 50 years after the suites were written. And apart from the visuals, one of the most distinctive differences with the two types of bow is that a separate bows on a baroque bow are extraordinarily legato. You can barely hear the change of bow as you move backwards and forwards. Whereas on the Tourte bow we can, it's quite articulated. Even if we try and get smooth. I mean, that's part of it, it's got power and strength, and we can create incredibly dramatic sounds and different kinds of hard and soft articulations. But this smoothness is better done legato as a slur. And so if we're looking to achieve real smoothness using a Tourte bow, it is very commonly solved by adding in slurs. So I'm going to propose that is the solution we will be using in this prelude, and we will take each chord in a whole breath, the bow being the breath. So that's why I gave you this exercise. So that you can add the fingers in. And in that, really I was concentrating on demonstrating the bow there, the smoothness. You can hear all the strings, the 3 strings ringing all the time. And one of the reasons is the bow, the contact, the slurring, rather than restarting the sound articulation each time on a separate bow. The other reason is the left hand. The left hand must remain on the string as much as possible, as little movement, and keep it down. Now this particular 4 bars that I've just demonstrated, these 4 chords, we have come across before in this series, and that was in the very first week I gave you Feuillard's 6th study, which uses the Bach chords, and these chords are these. And then the top 2 strings, as minimal movement as possible, because by holding your finger on the string, it rings all the way through, and that way we can get this sense of the whole shimmering chord ringing over the tonic pedal. That's what the G is a tonic pedal. As you change from chord 4, the subdominant, implied dominant 7th over a tonic pedal, and then resolution. And obviously I omitted in that the first bar, which is the G, a tonic chord. So keep those fingers down, minimal movement. Obviously you'll have to take your fingers on and off for the change, but then leave them down as much as you can. So 1, we're being ergonomic, and 2, we're giving it its best shot to be beautifully resonant, as well as this tiny highlight of a melodic change here. Which is really beautiful. So there we have 2 thoughts. 1 is the left hand, keeping absolutely on the string, minimal movement. The other is the bow breath, being really smooth, and we're attempting to go for completely flat hair all the way throughout. You might also notice that because this G is important, we're trying to make it as if it's there all the time. As an open string, you can still hear it. Obviously, even though I've come away, the string is ringing. And so if we give it a good, generous swish from the bow, the idea is we can keep that sound going whilst we play the other notes. So in these Gs, if you like, what I'm trying to sort of show you is a bit of a push at the beginning of each stroke, whether it's the up or the down, to let it get ringing, and then measure out your bow so that we get the melodic rise and then the oscillations, which again is flat bow hair, Again, a slightly raised upper arm as we're crossing over the two strings there. So those are our very famous first opening lines. And as you know, knowing this work rather well, I should think orally if nothing else, is that by the fifth bar, we've already gone to the relative minor. It's absolutely astonishing change. At the end of bar 4, we have gone to E minor. And at bar 5, you'll need a flat finger across the strings, but only put it back onto point tip after the open A. Now, finger-wise, it's fairly straightforward. It's commonly we place the first finger on B in the very last beat there. Now, you may have noticed with my bowing, I've got sort of a waterfall bowing that came from Cassell's, which is a 5-4-4-3. So here's your 5, which ties us over into the second beat. Here's a 4, ties into the third beat, and then another 4 ties us into the fourth beat. Then the last 3 notes, which gives a little bit more speech, if you like, as we enter into the following bar. This same waterfall bow solution happens at bar 7. So again, the last 3 notes, you know, by having them by themselves, we can again create some real draw of the ear and the line as it comes into the following bars. Both of these sort of resolving bars are fantastic. So the first time we go into an A7 chord, and the second time at the end of bar 7 into 8. Gone into an E minor chord. Right, so bars 5 and 7, they work quite well as a pair if you want to just play them when you're practicing together. Just try one after the other so you can feel this bow. Watch out that towards the end of bar 5 we have a telescope movement there. Bring the first finger in. There we are. So those 2 bars. Now let's have a look at bars 8 and 10. 8, as I mentioned, is an A7 chord. Now the beginning of this shape is just like the opening chords, where we have, which is melodic. And the beginning of bar 8 is similarly melodic to start with. But afterwards, it's an oscillation of the chord, a kind of resonance, if you like, as we have at the opening with the... we've got 2 strings alternating, and therefore we can keep resonance. So at bar 8, a really nice solution for this is that the first A you stop, so that we hear this melodic line. It's really in the fingers there, and then you use an open A for the resonance, so you can just about hear the 2 notes together. Here we have it, melodic followed by harmonic. So that it's almost like a sort of a synthetic string, you know, sort of like giving a little echo there. And then when we come to bar 8, it's a standard fingering 1-1-2. Now you notice here I've got a very flat first finger across the bottom 2 strings to hold them together so they'll resonate, and I can still hear the E at the bottom. If you were to do this, you know, try and move the finger, you're going to let go of the chord and we won't hear the resonance. Now you need to be prepared for that, so that just before, get that finger ready to flatten across the strings. After the bar, we'll have to go back onto point for the F sharp, then actually bar again here rather than point. That way you're ready ready for returning to the low E. So watch out for those barring techniques there. Good. As we come out of bar 8, we're still on this first finger of the E, and we're going to have 8 notes in a row. This will mean lots of strength, flat bow hair at the point. Use the forearm muscle to keep the strength. Imagine a crescendo in order to avoid a diminuendo. And in actual fact, this is building up. We're looking at an A7 harmony through here as it's pressing towards the dominant, which is D. So holding on to the strings with the bow, which is made slightly more challenging in that we're crossing 3 strings and coming back to a middle string there, keeping flat bow hair, a lot of power and strength, and then we have 3 notes. Now if you use a good deal of the bow there, we're already creating the drama, we're getting a crescendo coming in. Now 5 notes. Now this is the only up bow on a first beat in the piece. Actually there may well be a one at 29. Anyway, here we have it. Again, a full bow so that we are keeping the drama going. And then here is the resolution. And then it continues on a little scale. So the idea in bars 9 and 10 is this is a really amazing drawn line as we get very excited and come to the peak of the top of the mountain or little hill, whatever we're walking up at the moment, and arriving at this dominance. So 9 and 10 again. Is about to turn around to another corner. Maybe there's a cloud on the horizon because bar 11 is going to be full of diminished chord. I'm not going to cover that today, but I have given you some homework to do so that you'll be really ready for that bar 11 on the next session. So all in all, we've got some thoughts about the bowing, why we're slurring, why we want to try and get 3 strings resonating together and how we do that, both with the bow and the left hand, where there are melodic points and where there are harmonic points. The whole thing, of course, is based on fantastic chords per bar, and by recognising and understanding what they are, you can really draw the colour. So altogether then, these first opening 10 bars, we have this. And there we have some of the journey so far, which is covering some amazing views. One little thing that occurred to me whilst I was playing there, which I hadn't reminded you, that when you move into bar 8 with the barred first finger, don't forget that with the right arm you need to drop the elbow and point that bow away from you in order to be nicely perpendicular on the string. It's just so that we really get a rich sound of a sort of sitting down sound. It's not forced at all. If you drop the arm, you've got natural arm weight in there. There we go. Plenty to get on with, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next session.